Welcome. The purpose of this presentation is to share knowledge related to the content, structure, and creation of a dissertation. No matter what you might have learned from writing course papers, the dissertation is a different beast. This presentation will offer tips for reviewing literature, deciding on a methodology, reporting your findings, and discussing how it all fits together. I recommend you pause this presentation at any time and email me if you have questions or want to receive the PowerPoint or updated links to information. Your dissertation won't feel real until proposal defense, and it won't be real until it's finished. To get there, you'll want to read countless dissertations. In the beginning, look for those with a similar topic. As you reach certain stages in your own dissertation, I recommend you look for others of similar methodology and theoretical framework. You'll benefit from seeing how others manage their information, structure, and style. As you become more familiar with dissertation writing, you'll also feel more comfortable in understanding of the marathon you're about to run. If you've heard the idea of a good enough parent, I think the same thing applies to your dissertation. Doing too little obviously creates problems. Doing too much, that's also a problem. As you begin your dissertation, every idea you have will be like an item of food placed in your fridge until you have a well-planned topic and strategy, a recipe for success. Guided by trusted feedback, your previous ideas will just be taking up space in your brain, much like unused food in a fridge. Considering cognitive load constraints, I suggest you put together a plan and recipe for success first before you go grocery shopping. Conducting a proper literature review is easier said than done. To begin, you'll need to adequately find the depth and breadth of literature related to your topic. As you search for articles, emphasis should be placed on peer-reviewed journal articles. Google Scholar can help you expand your selection of articles, just as you can look at the references section of your current articles to identify common older references. You can use Google Scholar to find newer sources. By individually entering each of your sources into Google Scholar, you can then click on Cited By to reveal more recent writings that referenced the source article. By doing this for multiple sources, you'll find more recent literature and see how the research has progressed over time. To better manage this information, I recommend you take notes on all of these readings within a single Word document. Begin each notes section with a proper APA reference for the source. You can also get this by clicking on the quotation mark in Google Scholar. Having a single Word file with all of the notes from your readings, it will make it easier for you to search for things. Once you have a larger collection of literature, you should then look for trends. A research matrix helps. To do this, you can easily create an Excel file to notate brief information for each source regarding year of study, key findings, methodology, population, theoretical framework, implications for practice, and recommendations for future research. By making this information more visual, it should then be easier to identify trends. For instance, has the topic been looked at in a similar or different ways when it comes to methodology and theoretical framework? How have the implications for practice and/or recommendations for future research changed over time? How might your study connect with the most recent recommendations for future research? These are just an example of some of the questions you might be asking as you look for trends in the literature. This information should definitely help you narrow your focus and will guide your methodology and theoretical framework. When mapping the structure and outline for your literature review, remember 3 is a magic number. You should have at least 3 sentences in a paragraph, at least 3 sources in a paragraph in your literature review, at least 3 paragraphs in a section, and at least 3 sections in a literature review. Also, be aware of verb tense when citing sources. Use past tense when detailing the previous actions of the author. use instead of Smith 2009 states, write Smith 2009 stated. Use past tense in most all cases where you're writing about the author. When detailing the findings from a source, match the verb tense to the year of study. Instead of teachers value curriculum flexibility, Boyd 2002, write teachers valued, or find a more recent source to legitimize the present tense, because 2002 is not recent enough to use present tense. You can use Boyd 2002 if you also have supplemental sources that you're adding to it. For instance, you could write teachers value curriculum flexibility, Boyd 2002, as well as Smith 2015, and Thurgood and Marshall 2019. By using those three sources, you have more recent sources to legitimize use of present tense, and you also have three sources over a time period to show that the present tense value is something that has continued to happen over time. So when you are writing about your sources and describing things from the literature, be aware of tense in your verb and whether you're using one or multiple sources to support a particular finding. This will show how things have changed over time, as well as put an extra emphasis on certain findings you want to emphasize. Make sure to also detail more than just the findings. Decide on whether methodology, population, theoretical framework, implications for practice, or recommendations for future research should also be detailed. Write about trends. Make note of any exclusions or opportunities missed within the literature you reported. Remember that your literature review should set up your own study in as many ways as possible by mentioning certain things regarding theoretical framework, methodology, etc. Those help set up your own. So, and once you finalize your own study and methodology, you'll likely want to go back and revise your own literature review so you're properly setting it up. I also recommend mapping paragraphs for sections that will have at least 3 additional paragraphs. If the sections and subsections are more than 3 to 5 pages long, you might also benefit from a conclusion paragraph for that subsection. Just remember though, 3 is the magic number. So if you have 3 paragraphs within a section, you might also add a 4th paragraph, a mapping paragraph, to establish what the content, structure, and purpose of that subsection is. And that will help make mapping and outlining and creating structures for your literature as you chunk it into 10 to 15 page papers within your literature review. That will make it easier for you to get things done. I recommend you pause this presentation for a moment and read through the descriptions for theoretical and conceptual frameworks. Now that you've had a chance to read it, please know that you'll want an established framework for how you view your topic. Failing to have a framework shows that you might not have a good enough grasp on the literature and topic to proceed. Your methodology should be guided by the literature on the topic and your reasonable access to a population. Without both of those, you'll struggle. As you review the literature, you'll need to regularly question yourself. What might I be able to do differently? Your methodology dictates your game plan for everything you'll do after successfully defending your proposal defense. Be aware also that mixed methods do not mean a little bit of both, or that all surveys count as quantitative research. That's not the case. Of note, most of what you write prior to proposal defense regarding your methodology uses the words like will be. You'll need to revise that tense in the writing later. Similar to your literature review, you will want a solid strategy, outline, and structure for reporting your findings. Splitting things up into 3 to 5 sections is recommended. You might choose to do this by research questions, themes, or categories. You'll also want to connect your findings to those from the literature to better set up your discussion later on. Pseudonyms help protect the confidentiality of your organization. Whether you realize it or not, pseudonyms also dictate perception and are an opportunity to communicate more effectively. For instance, the pseudonym you create for the organization your research focuses on should be purposeful and preferably not something too bland. Obviously, you'll want to protect the confidentiality, but you'll also want something easy for the reader to follow. If you abbreviate or create an acronym as your pseudonym for the organization, choose something that is easy for the reader to remember. This reasoning also applies even further for pseudonyms for participants in your study, especially for qualitative research. If there is information about the participants that differentiate them without making them identifiable, such as role, approximate years of experience, education, and the like, you'll want to make it easy for the reader to remember that. Creating a table to show the data early and crafting pseudonyms that make it easier for the reader will help, but you will not want the reader to feel the need to regularly look back at that table. By thinking of pseudonyms as usernames, which are more flexible, you can help the reader retain important information better. For instance, you can have the first letter or length of the name mean something, or insert coded information into the name to communicate relevant information. As example, the pseudonym Ray could become Ray M 3 to 5 to signify the participant has a master's degree and 3 to 5 years of experience. When it comes to tables, charts, and figures, strategy is also important. I recommend you discuss the information before you refer to the table, chart, or figure. Otherwise, the reader will want to jump straight to the visual and might miss something important in your text. Also, not all tables, figures, and charts are relevant enough to include them within the text of your writing. Oftentimes, it's best to place them in the appendix section. That way, the text of your writing has few tables, the ones that are most important for the reader to see. Lastly, for strategy and style, your reporting of the findings should not over-rely on numbers or quotes. Remember, you're a guide. Guide the reader through the key information and don't burden the cognitive load of your reader. And don't be afraid to ask someone else for feedback on this for your findings section. Ideally, your reporting of the findings weaves in brief comparisons to findings from the research literature. That makes it easier for you to then synthesize and summarize those comparisons in your discussion section to better show how everything fits together. By mentioning implications for practice during your review of the literature, you can now use the implications from your study in relation to the literature. This is how things should connect and build within your dissertation. The literature sets up your methodology, connects to your findings, and helps influence and guide your own implications for practice. The same applies for your recommendations for future research. If you do a good job, the reader will understand where your recommendations come from and agree with them because you've adequately set them up in your connection to the literature and developments over time. For more information, guidance, and templates, the links here are helpful and are available on the Academic Writing Tips Google document, which I'll provide the link to later on, as well as the Navigating the Dissertation site. I will try to provide links to both of these in the YouTube comments section below. Your chair will eventually provide guidance regarding the timeline for finalizing your dissertation committee members. As you do this, be realistic and purposeful. Think about expertise, availability, and workability. Remember though, these committee members, they are for you and they're for your study. Sometimes the person you might want might not be best for your study. So talk with your chair and figure out something that's fair. I'm not sure if I've ever seen a presentation that did not produce questions in my own mind. Once you've had a chance to process and develop these questions of your own, please contact me to ask them and let me know at any time. This page contains links that I highly recommend you check out. Please contact me if you have any questions. I will also try to include some of these links in the comment section on the YouTube page of this video, because I understand copying and pasting these is not really possible from a video. Once again, please let me know if you have questions about anything. Good luck.